I got to kick this thing off. Can I kick it off? 1, 2, 3, 4. Ladies and gentlemen, listen.
Conversate with Us Radio presents the Man Listen Show. We are the blackest radio show on the internet. We bring you our opinion on topics that affect the black community in an effort to enlighten, enrich, and empower every brother and sister that falls under the sound of our voice. We operate on a no-hating frequency, so be prepared for us to keep it 100% real and 100% black all the time. Please follow the show on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Man Listen Show. You can also find the show on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, and Google Play. Please share the show and make sure you use the hashtag ManListen. I'm your host, Marv B. Let me introduce the crew. C's not with us today. Shout out to C, but I got my brother Lav. Lav, what's up with you, bro?
What's going on, man? How you doing today?
Man, I'm doing good, brother. I can't complain. And
Good.
We got a special episode today. You know, often we highlight black businesses, black professionals, but today we are highlighting a black author, our very own Aryka Nycole Moore. Aryka, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
All right. Good to have you. So the new book, Diabolical Tales of Woe, right?
Yeah.
Are you excited? Tell us about it.
I'm definitely excited. The book is 11 short stories. They're not necessarily scary. They're more twisted than anything else. So that's why I didn't want to necessarily say scary stories. That's why I put Diabolical Tales. I'm very excited about how it all came together. And I'm very proud of the final product.
So I know many people, including myself, want to write a book. I've been saying I'm going to write a book. I'll start off with an outline. I'll start with the first chapter, and life gets in the way. And I never really finish the book. Like, the book never really gets past the first chapter, right? I even tried to hire my daughter to be a ghostwriter, and I guess my story was that uninteresting. She became unenthused and didn't finish the book. But so you managed to not just put out your most recent book, Diabolical Tales of Woe, but this is your second book. Your first book also has been out on Amazon and people can catch it. What's the title?
Lost, a collection of poems.
So you managed to do all of this while maintaining a career as an attorney, raising a family, being a wife, and holding down the Man Listen crew. Like, what motivated you to persevere and actually finish the book and put it out?
I think that when you're in love with the idea, it motivates you to complete it, because I really wanted to see not only the final product that I saw in my head come to life, but also to see just this plan come to fruition. So it kind of motivated me to keep going, even when I really didn't know how I could keep going. Because the hard part was coming up with stories that I thought were original. I didn't want to have a book full of stories that people had heard before that, you know, people were like, okay. It was difficult for me to come up with stories that I thought were unique enough to make it into the final product.
Well, you know, I read the book, obviously, and I was thoroughly entertained. You know, I love you because I don't do scary stuff. I don't do horror movies. The only type of movies I like to watch are stuff that's gonna make me laugh, or if it's like over the top, like killing and shooting, like military type stuff, like the A-Team or whatever. I just do not like being scared. But like you said, I was really entertained with the book, and I'm not just saying that because you're my little sister. I mean, I could really see the detail that you put into it and the level of thought and research that you put into the book. So can you talk about the process of how you put it together, like how you came up, like, okay, I want to talk about this with each story. Like, what was the method that you used to approach to put together this compilation of short stories?
Well, initially, when I was on bed rest, I entertained myself by watching old episodes of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. which is just something I used to watch as a kid.
I could see that. Because now that you say that, the book and the different stories, like you said, it wasn't really horror per se, but it was more twisted. So it did give me, now that you say it, that Alfred Hitchcock kind of Twilight Zone vibe with the stories that you were writing.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to marry the concept of Alfred Hitchcock Presents with Tales from the Crypt. I felt like Alfred Hitchcock Presents has really great stories, but it's kind of slow because it's, from the 50s or whatever. And then Tales from the Crypt had a lot of gore and action, but the stories were kind of silly. Like, you made a person into soap, and then the bar of soap melts your entire body down into nothing. Like, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's entertaining to watch because the person's melting in the shower, but it was more the gore and the action that made that show interesting than the stories. So I thought if I could come up with a TV show, which this was written to be a TV show, to combine a really great story with more gore and action to keep, people in our generation today entertained, then I thought it would be something that could fit into not necessarily the new Twilight Zone or the Black Mirror, kind of concept, but catch that wave of excitement that's kind of going on now.
So is that why you chose the horror genre? Because you could have wrote about anything. Highly intelligent. For those of you who don't know, Aryka is like Doogie Howser. Am I lying, Lav? Like, when we first met...
Not at all.
When we first met Aryka, she was like 15, 16 years old.
Right.
On a college campus. And we were like, who was this little girl? And...
Literally, right?
Literally, who was this little girl? And once we, found out her story, I'll be honest with you, on the college campus, freshmen coming onto the yard. Lad, you know where I'm going with it. Freshmen coming onto the yard. Everybody's like, I'm staking my clamp and to put my bid in with that one. You know what I'm saying? But we see Aryka, we just like, nah, man, she off limits, dog. Everybody got to leave her alone, man. She's 16.
Right,
and, we better not catch nothing going down with this one, dude. You know what I'm saying? She at least got to make it to junior year before y'all cats try to run y'all game. So I just say that to say that, that's part of the reason why she was the first person that I asked to be down with the crew, because I know that I can't, to make this show effective, I couldn't do it alone, and I wanted some of the smartest people I know. And Lavsy and definitely Aryka are those people. So when I look at this story and I realize that, you could have wrote about anything. You could have wrote about law because you're an attorney. You could have wrote about motherhood, being a wife. You could have penned to paper about any topic. What made you decide to do more of the suspense horror type genre?
Well, for me, I grew up in a household that always watched horror movies. Like, since we were little kids, I always sympathize with the murderers in the movies because that's, like, Freddy is my favorite. I love Freddy. I don't want Freddy to die. I want him to win. So,
Freddy apologist.
Right. My mom always tells this story about, so I've been writing since I was a little kid, and she always tells everybody about this story that I wrote when I was a little girl about a person whose shadow used to leave them and go kill people and then come back. And so she just loves this story. And I don't know, she lost it somewhere throughout the years. And so she's always telling people about the story that I wrote when I was a little girl. And so when I had the idea to do the show, that story kind of popped up into my head and it just confirmed that was the direction that I needed to go with this book. I had already done a book of poetry. This book is more what I'm used to writing, short stories, scary stories. I don't know if you remember this, but I read a short, scary story at the Alpha pageant freshman year. And when I got through reading my story, everyone just stared at me. No one clapped. No one laughed. They were like,
man, I do not remember that.
Somebody's eye out.
You keep mentioning you had it in the mindset of like a TV show, maybe a TV series. You mentioned Alfred Hitchcock and then Tales from the Crypt. I just want to know, can I host when you get to that point? Because I believe it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Lav want to be the Crypt Keeper. He want to be the Crypt Keeper.
I want to be, because I think on the like Twilight Zone too, another show similar. I used to love that show, and I think actually that's something that's missing from like TV now is a show like that. I think it would do well. I do.
Well, the interesting thing is somebody's already reached out to me to see about making it a movie or a show. I don't necessarily know what all that would take, but it's definitely what I want to make happen. And you got the perfect voice for the host, because you know you can get that, especially if you get that voice you have on the other show. Get that spooky vibe going.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Listen back to the prior show, y'all. Y'all know what we talking about. But yeah, but see, I would rather see it. You said like Twilight Zone, Alfred Hitchcock. I would like to freak this into some old Tales from the Hood type joint. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I'm thinking more of a show. You know, get 4 seasons out of this. Get the money over and over. That's what I'm talking about.
Lad trying to get residuals and everything.
Residuals, man.
Yeah.
I'm all for that.
So let me ask you. A lot of times writers pull from personal inspiration, right? They pull from things that happen to them and they intertwine that within their stories. They may leave certain details out. They may add certain details so that, you know, the people that they're talking about are protected. Did you do that with this book? And if so, how did you protect the people that you were actually writing about? Because I'm sure all of your friends and family have supported you and they bought this book. And I'm sure they could look at some of the stories and be like, wait a minute, she talking about me. You know what I'm saying? So
like I'm the best
man. Right. So
yes, of course. I think it's impossible for a writer not to pull from their personal experiences. I think that as you progress as a writer, you try to distance yourself from your characters. And so maybe some of the first stories that I came up with are more closely related to personal experiences. But since I've been writing it for 3 years, I think that the last 2 years, for sure, the stories that I've written are the least associated with my real life. And then some of the stories, it'll be like close to a seed of something from my life that you really couldn't necessarily, relate back to me or to a particular person. And as far as those stories that people can see themselves in, so I shared a meme not too long ago that said, as an author, I reserve the right to include you in any of my stories.
So let me ask you this. Have you been called to the table? Has somebody hit you up in the DM or called you and be like, hey, you wrote that story about me? You trying to poison me? You trying to choke me out? Did you get called on that?
No, not yet, because the people that I think would possibly see themselves in the story are either blocked or are probably not going to be motivated enough to support my book anyway. So they're going to have to hear it through the grapevine and be like, this kind of sound like this might be you. Now, I have had like some reviews where my neighbor says she's not going to eat or drink in my house anymore.
Right.
And my husband's coworker said he should be concerned and sleep with one eye open. But I think these are great reviews because, like, for me, like, Stephen King is one of my inspirations. The book, to me, blows my mind that there are grown people walking around on this earth afraid of clowns because of this book. Like, generations of people traumatized by this book. That's how I would like to impact readers. I would like for people to be scared for generations.
But it wasn't just it. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. That was another movie that had cats shook. I ain't gonna lie to you.
True.
Hey, the Hamburglar, man. When I was a kid, that little Hamburglar at McDonald's scared the mess out of me, boy. He basically a clown too.
I almost with no clowns. Period.
None of them.
Man, I highly encourage our listeners to pick up this book. Go to Amazon, Diabolical Tales of Woe by Aryka Nycole Moore. Please, support this author, support our sister. You'll definitely be entertained. Aryka, which one of these stories, because it's 11, correct? 11 short stories. Which one of these is your most favorite?
Oof. I like different stories for different reasons. So one of the stories gave me some closure. One of the stories gave me a little bit of revenge that I never got in life. But I want to say probably my favorite story idea is the last one, which is why it made it into the book, because I really only wanted 10 stories. But after I came up with that one, I was like, yeah. So the 11th story, I guess, is my favorite, just because I think it's it combines the reader in me and the writer, and then that's one of those stories I said grows from like a seed of something in my life that if you know me very well, then you can relate to, or you can see how that relates to my life. But if you don't know me that well, then you're not going to see any correlation between it. So it's one of those things where I know how the story came about, but my readers probably won't, for the most part.
Gotcha.
Which makes it a little bit more intriguing, I guess.
Got you. We talked about your inspiration from different horror genres like Alfred Hitchcock, Twilight Zone, but as a writer, who do you look to as sort of a role model or somebody who inspires you to write? Who do you look to?
Well, ironically, the person that, because I always consider myself to be a writer, but like you said, a lot of people have this book idea in their head and it never comes to fruition. They never put the time and energy into actually finishing it because it's a lot harder than thinking about it, actually, writing it and editing it and turning it into a finished product. But my mentor, she's someone that I look up to in life in general. She's actually the reason why I was able to motivate myself to complete this, because I've known her since I was young. She went to Tulane Law School. So initially she was my legal mentor. She is amazing. She's a prosecutor and she started her own firm. Then she became a state representative. And one day we were on vacation in Vegas and me and her were sitting by the pool just talking, and she's on her laptop and she finished writing her first book while we were on vacation. And I was thinking to myself, what did I do productive with my life today? If she can finish writing a book on vacation while doing all of the things that she's doing, mom, wife, representing a whole district and a state and whatnot, then I should be able to put a few extra hours towards a finished product. And so that's what led to me finishing the first book, which was the book of poetry. And then once you do it, you know that you can do it. So that Black woman, LaDawn Blackett Jones, who's my mentor, she's the one who motivated me to write the book in the first place. And then I have another friend who's also a lawyer, Tiffany Simmons, and she's written a couple of books herself. So I kind of have a circle of strong women that I can look up to who are also my peers. So it's interesting to have people that you can look up to and yet still call if you have questions or problems.
I did have a question. Before or when the book was about to come out, we had the conversation with the leading Black horror genre, the author, and it was someone that was not Black. Does that representation, is that something that you feel you're obligated to do? Is that your characters are Black? I mean, it doesn't necessarily say that, but is that something that you feel like you have to do? Or is it more geared towards just the general public? Or
well, I tried to make my characters more ambiguous in terms of race for television purposes, since I was writing it with the mindset that it was going to be a TV show. I didn't want someone reading it in that capacity to like pigeonhole into some type of physical characteristic. So I kind of, while I describe the characters, it's not something that I focus on per se.
okay, yeah, that's where I was getting at. It was because the television aspect, and I was just wondering.
Yeah, I thought that might hold me back if all of my characters were super, not hold me back in a bad way, just I didn't want it to be stuck in one category or, one genre. So I don't want it to necessarily have to be on Tyler Perry's network with those bad hairstyles.
Oh, man. I was about to say that. I was about to say that.
Hey, hold on now.
No hating.
Tyler's money is good money.
Take it, definitely.
Yeah, Tyler, because if Tyler come and cut the check, you go take,
But I didn't want people to feel like it could only go to one network.
Only Tyler Perry could work with it, right?
Yeah,
or not even just that, or only Lifetime, or only anything.
Gotcha.
So I wanted the reader to be able to see themselves in the story. So even if they don't necessarily see themselves as the main character, I feel like I attach to characters more when they look like how I want them to look in my mind when I'm reading.
But
I think we all do that.
But hood money is good money, and that's not to say that all black people are hood, but I think that it's been proven that as long as you are writing good material, it'll cross over. You look at the Cosby Show. Bill wasn't just Black America's dad; he was America's dad. You know what I'm saying?
America's dad.
You look at Blackish.
Blackish, yes.
I don't really watch TV, but my white coworkers or people that I interact with through work, they talk about Blackish all the time, and I think it's because of the writing. It's good writing. It's the way that they are able to just look at a story and just be entertained. And I guess it doesn't really matter to them if it's black people that is on the TV screen. So I think I get what you're saying, but I also think that we could tell our stories and it appealed to everybody, because I think that your writing, again, I was impressed by the level of detail that you put in, and I could tell that you did your research, because a prevailing theme was people getting poisoned in the book, but it wasn't just
research
like,
or
right,
experience.
Yeah,
right?
It was. For hubby's sake, I hope it's just research. You know what I'm saying? That experience, but like, instead of you just saying like she poisoned him, you could tell that you went into like Law and Order type research into like she used this type of poison. This is the effect that it had. So it wasn't just like your first rodeo, even though this is just your second book. I could tell that the level of effort and research that you put into this really, really made this stand out to me. So I want to commend you on that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and I agree that our stories do transcend when they're really good. And then a lot of times I think that the interest in our stories from other races, sometimes because I think with Blackish, sometimes it's kind of like a lens into how we live our lives, which I think some people are curious about.
Mm-hmm.
But I worry not necessarily just about, having it be too black or something like that, but I didn't want it to be just black people getting murdered every week on my show. So I wanted it to be more everybody gets murdered,
Everybody
everybody died.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, everybody dies.
Anybody can get it. Anybody can get
right.
it.
Anytime.
I didn't want it to be just us dying. I didn't want it to be just us murdering people, because I didn't want that either. So I walked the line of making sure that everybody can be a murderer and everybody can get murdered. You too can be murdered. I didn't want to leave anybody out.
So what's next? I mean, I'm sure that, you're still a young woman. You got 2 books under your belt. What's next? What are you working on now?
Right now, my next book is going to be, the title that I have already is Unsolicited Marriage Advice. And it's kind of like a compilation of things that I've learned over my last 15, maybe going on 16, I don't remember, years of being married, give or take.
Hey, you know how we talk about male privilege? That's female privilege right there. Because like if one of us is saying like, I don't remember how long I've been married.
You would get drugged. You would get drugged.
You would get drugged. She was just like, I don't remember. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, go ahead. Unsolicited marriage advice.
So it's kind of like just a lot of things that I've learned along the way, or good pieces of advice that I've received from people. A lot of times people in our community don't have a couple that's experienced to look up to and to get advice from. And so I actually have several couples who've been married, 30, 40 plus years that I can actually go ask advice to. And sometimes it's just when someone has been through it, you just receive that advice and that information a little bit better than you do from your friend that's been married for 2 years. You're like, okay, girl, wait till you get to 10 and then tell me what you think.
Or your single friend, right.
Right, or even worse, your single friends. That's why I say unsolicited marriage advice, because you don't have to take the advice, or, what they say, take what works for you and leave what doesn't. But and then I have another book that is taking me. I've been working on this book for so long. I don't know that I'll ever finish it, but it's about the lack of culture in the African American community. So it's kind of like a research book into like how communities pass down whole nuggets of what they want their children to pass on to their children, that they want their children to pass on for generations. We don't necessarily have the same holidays or religious beliefs or traditions, or this book is more like speculation of how that impacts us. Because, just certain things that other communities do that we don't do, that maybe if we had more of a set type of structure or what we thought would benefit Black families, and if we could create that structure and then pass it down, how helpful would it be to the communities?
That's going to be a tough one right there, because really what you're talking about is like a code of conduct. And
basically, yeah.
And if we had a code of conduct as Black people, we would be a force to reckon with. But we had too many people who relish, and me personally, I think it's the dumbest statement that people say when they say Black people are not monolithic. Actually, we are, because we all catching hell. You know what I mean? So we all in the same boat. Yeah. So we don't necessarily have to be the same, but we do need to be able to operate in a way that when things come at us, that we can handle it in an effective way, and to marshal our forces and to protect ourselves and to make sure that we are protected as a community. Because basically everybody leeches off us. Everybody comes to our community to get money off of us. They come and pimp us for our vote. Everybody comes to get us, and we get no return on investment. So I really want to encourage you to write that book, because I think, that's something that we need. We need a manual. And I think what you're doing, what you're talking about, that's exactly what it is. And you're the person to do it. Like I said, you're one of the most brilliant people I know. So I definitely want you to be encouraged and focused on completing that book. We look forward to your unsolicited marriage advice. And for y'all that are listening, that's copyrighted. You know what I'm saying? So don't try to bite that title. Don't try to copy it, because we'll come and get you. Because Aryka not only is an attorney, but she a gangster too. You read the book, she know how to take you out.
Read the book.
She know how to take you out.
You find out what's gonna happen to you. Read the book.
You don't want these problems.
But anyway, yeah, like I said, I really, really enjoyed the book. I'm so proud of you. I want to encourage everybody to go to Amazon, give them the title,
Diabolical Tales of Woe.
So make sure that you support Black people, support Black women, support Black authors. And, we're trying to do positive things. This is a young woman who is doing positive things in the St. Louis community. And any help, any support that you can give is much appreciated. So that being said, we'll go ahead and wrap up the show. Make sure that you follow the show on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Man Listen Show. You can also subscribe to the show on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, basically anywhere you can find your podcast. We'll holler at you next time. Peace.
Bye.
Peace.
See, what up?